now. Were you watching the I Am Traveller documentary on RTE2 last night? It's the first of a 3-part documentary which looks at the modern day realities of being a member of the traveller community in Ireland. It followed John Connors. Love hates John Connors, as everyone will know him as he examines the uncomfortable truths about racial stereotypes and traveller identity. He met surviving members of last October's Carrickmines fire tragedy and talked in a large part about his own experience, his battle with depression and his own experience of growing up as a traveller and making his way in this country of ours. Well, with me in studio to talk about this is Martin Mahon, who's a member of the traveller community here in Kerry, and we asked him to take a look at it and to talk to us this morning. I'd be eager as well, listeners, to get your views on it. But Martin, good morning for you and thanks for talking to us.
Good morning, Jerry. Thank you for having me this morning.
My first thoughts, a very well put together programme, I thought, very well made, and a lot of interesting stuff out of it. What did you think?
I thought it was exactly what it is like to be a traveller. He went into completely insight, not only into his own mind as to how he sees it, but he went to talk to travellers who are living in different situations and how they're dealing with not just the Carrickmines fire, but day-to-day life. Like, for example, I have so many bullet points written down. He talked about how he hated the term knacker, but is proud of being a traveller. Like, that's exactly the same thing. Like, knacker is a name that we're branded, but traveller is exactly who we are. So he hated the term knacker, but he loved being called a traveller, which is absolutely amazing because he said the same thing on camera, which I am telling people when I pass them in the street daily.
Yeah.
So we understand it. We don't know each other, but we understand each other perfectly. It's like he's alone in Dublin trying to change it, and I'm alone in here Tralee trying to change it, but it's like we came together. It's like I knew
because of the shared experiences you have had growing up as members of the traveller community.
Exactly. I mean, he talked about how he had a passion for acting, but to quote John, he said, it's like me becoming an astronaut has a better chance of me becoming an actor being a traveller in this country.
That's what he thought when he was growing up. He kind of said, look, if I was to tell anyone in my community, well, I want to grow up, I love movies, I love films, I want to be an actor, it would be the same thing.
But I know lots of travellers who just love film and love drama and love script writing, but they think they're going to go nowhere with it because it's the idea put in their head of, oh, how can a traveller make it? I'm just going to make a show of myself. I'm going to be ashamed. But John he's a freedom fighter for us in a way because he went out there and he conquered it, and he's trying to show us the way now. He's our leader, and we need to follow him in a way, if you want to look at it that way.
He also tackled the issue of crime, and one of the very powerful moments of it when he went to this meeting in Thurles, which was organised to talk
Paul
about
Williams,
rural
wasn't
crime.
It?
Yeah, Paul Williams was interviewed as well with regards to it, and it was an interesting part of it, and he was talking about the hatred in the room, and he felt that it was directed towards the travelling community, and that people felt, well, all of these gangs that are carrying out this rural crime, well, essentially they're all travellers.
Yeah, and I loved how he pointed out to Paul when he talked to him privately that the Cochrane attack, it was an attack by a group on a family on a farm, and they branded it the traveller gang that attacked him, not the travelling gang like when you're travelling from Dublin to Cork. The traveller gang, it was 7 people, 4 members of them were settled people, only 3 travellers, but yet they branded it traveller gang. How is that fair in any way when 4 members were settled people?
Do you think that encapsulates sometimes the generalisation that's out there?
Exactly. Just because there was 3 traveller members in it, now they were responsible for the actions just as much as the other 4. But why didn't they say a mixed group of settled people and traveller people? No, just a traveller gang got blamed for the whole incident.
Yeah. Martin, what did you make? And in fairness, he talked about the media, he talked about the discrimination that members of the travelling community feel growing up, but he also kind of internalised things pretty interestingly, and he didn't spare the travelling community either.
No, he was
for some of the
honest.
Traditions and for the lack of an ability to show any sort of vulnerability and weakness, which is effectively killing members of the traveller community, which he said himself, a 6-time higher suicide rate than the settled community. And he said a lot of it's down to the way travellers interact with each other.
You see, it's all down to this thing, Jerry, called, and John put it better, and the weird thing was I said it to my mother yesterday, and then I watched the show and John said the same thing. Travellers are broken down into 3 categories: pride, rage and shame. We have our own pride, and when we try to express our pride, we see that it's discriminated against, so we hold in our rage. And then we have our own secret shame, like so many traveling men about the suicide. But they're ashamed to go and talk to the professional people that are there, the professional doctors that are paid by this country so they can go talk to them because they see the racism that's against them, so they're afraid to go and speak their mind to get the medical help that is required, that they need to heal themselves. But they won't go because they're afraid of being discriminated against. So that's where the whole pride, rage, and shame things come from. And it's basically the public opinion of the travelers. I would say 80% of the public don't even have interaction with travelers. It's the media that puts the idea in their head, basically, from what they read and from what they see on the television, blackens their outlook.
What did you make of the scene, though, where he was in Pavey Point and he was around the table with fellow travellers and talking about, you know, and look, it's a problem. We talk about it on the radio all the time about people needing to talk to their own families and talk about mental health issues. But that the group around the table, and it was another discussion as well, they were talking about talking to one another or admitting to a member of your own family, look, I'm not doing well, I need help. But that there is a resistance there to do that because you'll either be mocked or you won't be taken seriously or you'll be told to cop on to yourself.
Exactly. It's going back to the whole pride, rage and shame thing. And it's more with men are more against opening up. Like with women are trying to get education. That's why there's so many courses now just for traveller women. Not just in the ITT, but everywhere. Cookery courses, culinary courses, everything. But with the men, it's men are stuck in their own shield because they have this pride. They're ashamed to go and express themselves. They're ashamed to say, yeah, I have an interest in this, or no, I have a problem with this. They'll only keep it in their secular group.
Yeah.
And there's no, and the people they tell in the group have no education to go help them. So it's the discrimination that is actually killing them on the inside because they're afraid to go and speak out to the people that they need help from because they're ashamed of being discriminated and not being accepted.
What did you make of the educational portion of the programme, Martin, about, and particularly he was talking to a 15-year-old, I think.
Yes.
He was 15 himself, a guy who had left school after doing his junior cert, and he was asking him, look, well, what's the plan now? And he said, I don't know. So what do you want to do? He said, I don't know that either.
That is, it's very brutally honest, to be honest with you, Jerry. It's the brutality, it's the honesty of the young traveller man today. I would love to know how this whole thing came about like that. Travellers can think they can just drop education. Now, I know that's always been our bare bone to leave school soon as my parents were, but that needs to change. The change sometimes needs to come from the inside first before we can change the discrimination.
Yeah.
You know, because there is so many travellers out there that want education, that want to get jobs. And you'll never hear of a good family talked about on the radio because they're not fighting. There's no bare knuckle boxing.
There's no clips on YouTube of bare knuckle boxing and, you know.
And the YouTube generation is just creating this macho kind of UFC idea of travellers that we're all just for the bare knuckle boxing when that's not the reality of it at all.
Did you have any hope from the programme, Martin, from what John said about things, about maybe how things need to change?
I have hope, as I've always had hope myself. Like he opened our eyes to people who's not a traveller, who's not living this life daily. He opened their eyes as to what it's really like. Now, I'm hoping people will come away with it with just a little bit of understanding. Now, here's God hoping they will. But to be honest with you, I'm not sure it will. But he certainly made a big effect so far.
Yeah, one of the statistics from the programme was that 80% unemployment rate amongst travellers. Like, there's a reason for that. There's the discrimination element of it. He told a story of getting a job as a security, as a bouncer, and he'd done a course, went and got the job. He put on a Dublin accent to hide the fact that he was a traveller, and he was given the job.
I have that noted,
The first thing his manager said, look, you're not to let any travellers into this establishment. And that's what he faced, right? That's part of the reason why. But also, is there like there is in some settled communities, because of various different reasons of disadvantage and not getting proper resources or proper help, or again, education, that there's a cultural thing now. It's what my father did, it's what my grandfather did, it's what my mother did, what my grandmother did. I'm going to get to 18, I'm going to go on the dole, and that's going to be that. That's going to be a hard thing to change, isn't it?
It is going to be a hard thing to change. Like, he put it better himself. He has a quote, I have a quoted here. He said, "Travellers need to change their accent, the way they speak, just to be accepted in the civilization. You can't speak a certain way, look a certain way, otherwise you won't be accepted by your peers. That idea needs to go first. If that idea goes, then I promise you, you will see more travellers going to to education, going to college, because the stereotype and the so-called branding of all of us being the one kind will go away. Once they accept that, yeah, the traveller people are an ethnic group, which hasn't been accepted yet by the government. They're still not accepted as an ethnic group. Once they look at them as the ordinary person walking on the street and not some alienated race as to how we're treated, then you will see travellers going to education more. Not just going to their own meeting groups like we have for the men, where we go and we build men's sheds and we try and get education. We get men into culinary, we get men into building and working and construction sites, but that's just all travellers. That's the only way men will go.
It's not integrated.
It's not integrated, and that needs to change. We need to break down that wall.
Yeah. Martin, a question for you. From watching it and from seeing the issues laid out by John in the programme last night, one of the big stumbling blocks came from that meeting, meetings like the one in Thurles, and what that laid bare, the perceptions that are out there that a member of the settled community will think traveller and think, number one, trouble, number two, maybe aggression, number three, crime. That's a perception that's out there, probably from years of, obviously, of conditioning. But how does that get changed?
I think you need to go to the bone. I think you need to actually look at who is actually causing the actual event that you're speaking of, the law breaking. Because
he mentioned he said, look, there's about 10 families involved in feuds, for example,
yes,
and we're trying to work, and there are mediators trying to work with those families.
But there's also 800 families who are not in feuds, but they're not spoke about.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, the little boy, the brother of the Thomas, who was, God rest his soul, passed away in the fire. Him and his mother, he was recounting the story that they went to a house to try and sell some iron as to what his father does, and the little boy opened the door and said, "Get away from the door." Now, the young lad went back and knocked on the door and said, "What have I done to you?" And he said, "You's robbed my house 4 times. You's robbed my house 4 times." And he said, "We didn't do it. It was a different family." He said, "No, you's robbed my house 4 times.
As in you're all the same.
As you're all the same."
Yeah. All right, Martin. Well, listen, look, thanks for giving us your perspective and your view on it this morning. Obviously, there's another 2 programmes to come over the next 2 weeks, and we'll be keeping an eye on that. But look, thanks very much for talking.
Thank you for having me this morning, Jerry. Appreciate it.
No problem. Martin, thanks a million. That's Martin Mahon there from Tralee on our programme, or the programme that was on last night, I Am Traveller. John Connors, who many people would know from his starring role in the Love-Hate series, in the final 2 series of Love-Hate. Exploring the issues and the challenges that there are being a traveller in Ireland. If you saw the programme, we'd love to hear from you. Give us your views, 0667 123 666.